Thank you, Kyle. Hey, how's it going, everyone? Good. It's been exciting to be here. This is my second time back at the Captain's Cup. Came here last year. It was my first time. Been in Minnesota a couple times. Amazing place. Super grateful for the opportunity to be here with you guys. And like I said earlier, kind of to just the group, this event, the Captain's Cup, it really is a special opportunity. Like, this isn't something that is happening all over the country. It's not something that happened for me growing up. I didn't have anything like this where there was an emphasis on community, an emphasis on just getting to know each other and being able to connect with guys and people that maybe you don't really get to see otherwise unless you were here. And I think that's important to just acknowledge because, you know, if I would have had an experience like this, I think I would be further along in my journey as a person. So I want you guys to just take note of that. Make sure that you're grateful for that and thank your parents, thank the staff that was able to put this on. Just for reference, I'll have my phone just to, going in and out a little bit there. I'll have my phone to just kind of lean on a little bit as I talk to everyone here. I think last year the conversation was more specific about a couple things that I will touch on, but this year I wanted to open the floor a little bit more and make this a little bit more interactive with, you know, everyone here in the crowd, because ultimately, you know, this is really about you guys and it's about the opportunity that you have right now, not only as leaders, but as captains as well. I don't think being a leader is always being a captain. I think, you know, sometimes it is, but sometimes people get put in position to be captains, and that doesn't always mean that you are the leader of the group. So whether you're a leader, whether you're a captain now, this ultimately is about you guys, and I want to be able to just share a little bit of my experience, what has allowed me to grow as a player and a person, how that relates to leadership, and then open the floor and just be able to speak to you about what's going on, you know, in your circumstances right now, and how some of the things that I'm going to talk about can apply to you, and how we can, you know, make some direct impact and direct growth right away, because I think that's really important. So with that being said, just for, you know, purpose of introduction, again, my name is Jules Heningburg. I grew up in a small town called Maplewood, New Jersey, back on the East Coast, and I started playing lacrosse when I was 7 years old. I was very fortunate to play the game in a town where there was a lot of history. You know, we had the oldest club program, call it club program. It was really just a rec program. You know, you're showing up with your buddies in your hometown and playing with each other. We had the second oldest one in New Jersey, next to another town called Montclair. And, you know, when I started playing, I didn't realize that, you know, it was an opportunity I was very fortunate to have. Like, there weren't a lot of towns in New Jersey that had such a rich history and had coaches and people that cared so much, which I think was partly because of just the dads that we had who grew up playing and really were trying to give back to us. I didn't realize that, again, that was something to be fortunate for, because I see now, you know, not just here, but all over the country where there's players that they're not getting that experience. But I thought that everyone was getting that experience. So I'm a young player. I started playing at 7 years old, and lacrosse is the most important thing in the world to these dads and to Maplewood. Mind you, that was not my first sport. I was a basketball player. I loved basketball. I thought I was going to play in the NBA one day, and I had hoop dreams. For anyone that plays basketball, ball is life. That was me, and I thought that was going to be my trajectory. So I'm playing basketball, I'm playing lacrosse, I'm in this program in Maplewood, and something that keeps coming up while we're, you know, developing as young men is this idea of this guy by the name Jimmy Bianchi, and in the Maplewood program, Jimmy was someone who everyone just kind of revered, talked about. You didn't know who this guy was. You didn't really understand what it was. You just saw that there was a number 7 patch that you kind of had to wear on your jersey, and that you knew that this person, this guy, Jimmy Bianchi, he was this player, he was this leader, he was someone that, you know, all of us should aspire to be like. So me being someone that, you know, at a young age also, I didn't know this was a sort of a unique skill. I just kind of bought in. You know, I really enjoyed the conversations. I enjoyed hearing the history of this man, Jimmy. I had no idea who this guy is. But I was like, oh, number 7, like, okay, that's who I want to be like. That's important. We should be like number 7. So now I'm playing on this historic Maplewood lacrosse program. Everyone's talking about number 7. I'm playing basketball. that's my experience for 8 years playing rec, and really just thinking, hey, one day I want to be like this guy, Jimmy Bianchi, who mind you, again, I don't even know this guy at all. I'm hearing stories about him, but that was just what our culture was in Maplewood, and then further into Columbia High School. So I get to 8th grade. At this point, I'm developing as a player. I'm deciding, hey, do I want to play basketball? Do I want to play lacrosse in college? Well, what's my journey really going to be? And now I'm starting to think a little bit more critically about, I wouldn't want to say leadership, but just my experience as an athlete, right? I think that in 8th grade, I'm sure some of you out here have felt this too, but that's when that shift sort of starts to happen, right? Am I going to start going to the weight room a little bit more? Am I going to start maybe doing some extra work when no one's watching away from practice? Am I going to, maybe spend some time watching some film and doing some things to improve myself away from the team? And where am I going to start to invest some of those hours? And I think that started to happen for me really in 8th grade. And I thought it was going to be basketball. But then at that point, I had to make a decision. I think lacrosse is going to kind of be the pathway forward for me to, get a college scholarship potentially, because that was something my parents emphasized to me. It was important to do that, but they were never going to be able to pay for it. I didn't have the money growing up to go to college, so I had to earn that. And so I knew in some way that I wanted to get that, whether it was going to be basketball or lacrosse, and I decided that it was going to be lacrosse. And so now I'm building for however many years, I'm buying into this idea, this guy, Jimmy Bianchi, all of my teammates, I feel like we're so bought in, and all of a sudden 8th grade comes around, and I'm starting to hear rumors of different players going to different schools. So now I'm going to this public school, and I'm thinking that we're all going to go there, and we're all going to, fight for this state championship and rekindle this legacy of Jimmy Bianchi and Columbia lacrosse. I get to there my freshman year at Columbia, and I want to say on that rec program, we had 30 guys. I think at least half of them, all of the good ones except 2, left to go to prep schools across the state of New Jersey. So that wasn't an opportunity that I had. And so my freshman year, I get there, and this is my first kind of experience where, it started in 8th grade, where I had to start to take ownership of what I was going to do as a lacrosse player. But then freshman year comes in, and I had to play freshman, and I'll talk a little bit about why that happened. But we had a freshman coach, and he was 25 at the time, and, I'm 28 now, and looking back on it, I thought he was this super old guy. And he brought me and 2 of my teammates into the office, and he said, hey, look, we don't have another coach. We have me, and that's all this is going to be. So you and your 2 teammates, you guys are going to kind of have to act as coaches. And I was just like, all right, like I guess that this is going to be my experience. This is just what I'm going through. And that was kind of my first taste of, all right, I'm being called to do something, and I have a choice here. I can either sort of step up and take this experience head on and understand I have one coach. I have a lot of players on my team that have never played lacrosse before. Or I can kind of take a back seat and just let the season ride by. And before that, right, to just kind of touch on playing freshman, I didn't play varsity as a freshman. I played freshman, I played JV. I was playing rec lacrosse, 6th, 7th, 8th grade. I was always playing up. We would have opportunities to play in off season with each other, and I would play with older guys, and I would be doing very well. There was a rumblings of, hey, Jules is coming up. He's going to get to Columbia. He's going to play varsity as a freshman. But when I got there, the varsity coach said, hey, this isn't how we do things here. You're going to have to earn it. You can't play varsity as a freshman. And I remember going in his office and being so scared to go in and talk to him and go ask him, hey, could I have the opportunity to potentially try out for varsity? Not even be on the team, but just I want to show you what my skill is and who I am as a player. And he goes, no. And I remember that day crying in the hallway, all day long, just all my dreams for the past 6-7 years of building towards playing varsity as a freshman had been crushed. And now I'm tasked with being on this team with a bunch of guys who honestly are not very good and were really first year players. Mind you, this whole time I'm buying into this legacy of Jimmy Bianchi and really trying to make the most of myself and make the most of my opportunity to play. And I go through that freshman year where, I think we won 3 games the whole season. Lucky enough to play up a little bit on JV, and we did win the JV championship, and I felt like that was something where I started to build faith within myself and some belief in myself around who I was as a young man, who I was as a player. Went through that experience acting as a coach with my 3 other teammates while we had that coach who was 25 at the time and had no help. And now I'm going into my sophomore year and I'm reflecting on that experience. And again, I think, though I didn't say this before, but the biggest thing that I've learned about leadership is that leadership is a journey, and it's not a destination, and it's something that you're experiencing in real time. And sometimes you don't know, especially at your guys' age, that you are experiencing leadership in your own right. And that was me going through that experience as a freshman who was being tasked with, hey, you have to be a coach for all intents and purposes. And you're going to have to learn about yourself and how to help others and help players that have never played before. And I was just doing it because I thought that was the right thing to do and is what I needed to do to make the most of my experience. But that in and of itself was the start of my journey with leadership. Fast forward my sophomore year, and I'm still at that school, Columbia. And now that coach that I went into his office and I asked him, hey, can I play varsity one day? He looks at me and says no. And now come back sophomore year and I kind of have a target on my back. He's starting to say some things to me that, at the time I didn't think were very appropriate. I wasn't going to talk to my dad about it, but my brother was on the team, so he'd hear about it, he'd see it and happen in real time. And it started to become a bit of a hostile environment. Fast forward, I end up transferring out of the school and saying to myself, hey, I think that there's more for me out there, right? I think that there's, outside of just this journey of leadership, my personal lacrosse journey, there's more for me. And I had, again, a deep belief in myself about that. And so I transferred to this Catholic school. I was lucky my dad scraped together some money and, I was at the school and I really shouldn't have been there. I shouldn't have gotten there academically. But I was very fortunate that, it kind of slipped in, one of the last guys to get in. No one thought I was going to leave that public school. And I get there and I'm so excited. I'm at this new school, this new opportunity to play. And I get there, we start the season. You can't play for half the season. So I'm on the team. I'm sitting out. Our record before I was able to start playing, we were 2-8. So I'm going through this whole experience. 8th grade, our team gets gutted. 9th grade, I'm playing on the freshman team. I'm acting as a coach. 10th grade, I'm playing for a coach that doesn't even want me to be on the team. And then 11th grade, I'm transferring to a school that I thought was going to be this great experience, and now the team's 2-8. So now I'm looking myself in the mirror being like, did I make a bad decision? Where did I go wrong? What's going on? And again, I felt like it was another opportunity for me to just sort of to look myself in the mirror and ask, what do I want out of this, right? How am I going to make the most of this situation? And that, I talk about that leadership is a journey. Leadership ultimately starts and ends with yourself, right? Your ability to show up for yourself to then impact others. And that process of going through that and learning more about yourself and building your faith within who you are. And I talk about faith, I'm not talking about necessarily religious faith. I'm talking about the belief in something, having the courage to go for it and take action on it, right? Seeing something, feeling something inside yourself and then going for it. So we were 2-8 and I said to myself, you know what? I came here for a reason. I believe I can make an impact. I know that they need someone out there to organize a little bit more, to maybe lead a little bit more. And I think that I have what it takes to do that. I don't know for sure, but I'm going to take a stab at it. We go off, we win 10 games in a row after that. We end up beating the number 1 team in the country, who was Del Barton at the time. And all the while, right, it's kind of coming back to me. Who's that kid that came from that public school who just started playing and they rallied off this 10-game win streak and starts to sort of build this narrative around me as a person and a player. And I remember that I had to make that decision for myself, right, to take that step to go to that school. I remember us being 2-8. I remember what I felt going into that first game, knowing what impact I felt I could have, but not being sure of myself, and then going for it, having the courage to sort of step into a locker room where I knew no one, and build relationships and build camaraderie and be a little bit more vulnerable than I ever have been, and the results that it started to produce. And so for me, again, I look at that journey and I think about what was the leadership during that time, right? What was I doing as a player then versus what I'm doing now? And I think the biggest thing that I can think about transferring into that school and getting to go through that process as junior and then a senior and leave the program as a top 5 program in the state and now a program that produces Division I players year over year is I was doing things that I knew were important, but I was doing them out of a more selfish place than I was now, right? And I was doing it when I was a junior and a senior from a place of, and I was talking to some of you guys before about this, where I was just focused on me, right? I was just focused on how can I get better as a player? How can I show up for myself? And I talked about showing up for yourself, but I wasn't thinking about how I could necessarily impact other people. And I think that was a bit of a miss for me as a player when I was your guys' age, and something that I had to keep developing into my time at Rutgers. And I think that the biggest experience that I had as I got to Rutgers, my freshman year into my sophomore year, was meeting certain people. Was meeting certain people. And my freshman year at Rutgers, again, we get there, we're 5-10. We weren't a great program at all. And I thought to myself, did I make the same mistake I made before, right? Did I go to a school, did I go to a university where, I thought we were going to be, potentially Big East champions, Big Ten champions, make the NCAA tournament. And during that time, my freshman year, very tough, learned a lot about myself. That's when I started to unpack this idea of, okay, there's me, right? My experience that I'm going through, but how am I going to start to impact others? What is going to be that is going to kind of make the shift? Because what I had been doing to that time, it wasn't enough. I was a captain, I was a leader, but I didn't think I was leading at the level I needed to lead to get the results that I ultimately wanted. And I reflect on that humbly, knowing that, again, leadership is a journey, right? It's not a destination. Who I was as a leader when I was 14 or 16 or 18 is different than who I am as a leader today. But the constant for me was reflection, looking myself in the mirror, always asking, can I do more? What else can I do? Maybe not having the answers, but luckily being able to meet some people along the way, specifically when I got to Rutgers, which this was the most important thing for me, is felt like I was on this journey, but I was doing it a lot of the time without the positive influences that I needed to become the person that I wanted to become. And so a lot of it's timing, and it's the people that are in your life that you're fortunate enough to meet. And when I got to Rutgers, the first person that, I felt like really shifted my whole perception of leadership and making it less about me and more about showing up for myself, but doing that with the intention to impact other people, was a guy by the name of Scott Bita. He was a attackman that we played together at Rutgers, and I felt like we did the same things, right? Extra work, commitment to our nutrition and our fitness and the film, and just how deeply we cared about the game. But there was something that he did and something that he was doing that I felt like I was missing. And it was that his ability to connect with others, inspire others, and motivate others in a way that I felt like I wasn't doing. I was doing it leading by example. I was doing it in sort of small ways, but I didn't feel like I had this wave behind me of people that felt the buy-in that I felt that I had for him. And so I again, as I'm getting older, leadership is a journey. I'm continuing to reflect on what does that mean? What does it mean for me to be this player at Rutgers that, as a sophomore now, first team All Big Ten, feel like I'm starting to achieve some success at that level. But what does it mean to me that, hey, this gentleman, he's making this impact on me and this impact on the program. If I'm just a great player, right, are we going to be the program that I know we need to become? If I'm just doing the things that I have to do to worry about myself, is this going to be the journey and the experience that I want when I look back on my time? And the answer was no. And my ability to reflect on that, right, that I started to realize was the most important thing about my journey in leadership. And so I want to touch on a couple of key things, key sort of phrases, right, as I kind of round out getting to Rutgers and meeting Scott Bita and starting to realize it was great that I was a good player. It was great that I was achieving some individual success and accolades. I had been a captain. I had started to talk about leadership a little bit, but I had never seen it in action in a way that actually moved me, motivated me, or made me feel compelled to do something greater because of someone else. And that was when I knew I had to step up and do things differently. And so these kind of couple words really came to mind for me when I was thinking about what I wanted to talk to everyone today about. The first one is courage, right? Is courage. And I think of courage, it's taking action despite fear. The second one is vulnerability, right? The ability to be open, honest, and just be exposed. The third one is awareness. And that's something to note about my experience at Rutgers. That was big for me, was having the awareness around I was a great player, but I wasn't a good enough leader. I wasn't making the impact that I needed to make on other people. Taking notice of what's going on around you internally, how do you impact everyone and everything else around you? That's awareness. And then consistency, showing up regardless of the mood, your outcome that might happen, or any motivation, external, internal, you have, just being able to do it over and over and over again. So for me, I look back at my time at Rutgers, and I felt like I had this awareness. I knew that I wasn't good enough as a leader, as someone that was making impact, but I was doing the things day in, day out as a player individually to get to the level that I was trying to get to. But I was missing a couple of other ingredients. Courage, that first one, right? Action despite fear. I knew there was opportunities, whether it was in the locker room, whether it was on the field, whether it was off the field, feeling a sense of fear and leaning into that and still going for it. I could reflect on the moments that I had, and I'm sure a lot of you guys can have this too, where you felt that fear and you decided to not go for it, right? And then maybe it kind of sat with you after, whether it was the conversation with your friend, whether it was what you wanted to say in front of the team in that huddle, whether it was going into coach's office and having a conversation with him, right? Whatever that might be. Vulnerability, right? There is no vulnerability without courage. In order to be vulnerable, you have to be courageous. That conversation, that you're having with your teammate, are you really taking that extra step to open up to them and talk to them? I know I was talking to a group of young men here before about, where those guys at? We were talking about, there are 4 of you. Raise your hand. Yeah, we were talking about, perhaps having teammates who are different than you, who maybe do things that you're not used to doing socially, right, off the field. Do you have the courage to have a conversation and get vulnerable and try to find some connection to them outside of just playing lacrosse, right? Have you even thought about grabbing lunch with someone, jumping in the car, having a conversation, and just getting past the game, right? The surface level of hey, we just play lacrosse, right? That was something I wasn't doing until I realized that in order for me to actually build genuine relationships with my teammates, I had to start being a little bit more vulnerable, and that if I wasn't going to be vulnerable with my teammates, there was no reason for us to have a connection. And if there was no reason for us to have a connection, then how could I lead them? Consistency, right? Consistency, showing up, right? This was something that I felt like I started to do at Rutgers when I was young, but I didn't realize how important it was that every single day, if you wanted to be considered a leader, you had to be someone that was going to show up, be the best version of themselves, regardless of how late you were up the night before, regardless of whether or not you had an exam, regardless of how hard the lift was, regardless of all of it. Could you show up and be consistent? Because that's what ultimately people are looking for, is reliability. They're looking for someone that can get the job done day in and day out. And if you can do that, that's providing that motivation for them. That's what they're looking for in a leader, is someone that can do that and inspire them to get the job done when it's becoming too hard for you to get it done yourself. And that was something I thought I was doing, but I realized that I was only doing it 75% of the time and not 100% of the time. All right, so just to lean back into those 4 words, courage, vulnerability, awareness, and consistency, these were things that as a player at Rutgers, I knew I wasn't doing, and that I was introduced to a guy by the name of Scott Beta that I felt was leading the way. And then fast forward to my pro career, just to bring it full circle, I've been playing for 7 years now, and not once have I been named captain. So I think playing professionally is definitely a different experience in college and different in high school. But I started to have to lean into my faith a little bit more as a professional and understand the circumstance that I've been in. How can I show up as a leader regardless of the title of captain, right? The first person that showed me to do that, a guy by the name of Dan Dawson. I got drafted to the San Diego Seals my rookie season, and I remember talking to Dan and him saying, hey, you know, it's me, he's a Hall of Famer, another guy by the name of Garrett Billings, another Hall of Famer. This is playing in the NLL. Another guy by the name of Kyle Buchanan, currently on the Buffalo Bandits, 2-time champion, and then 3 other draft picks that were ahead of me. And I was fighting for time and trying to get on the field as a player. And I remember having a conversation with Dan about his belief in me as a player. And I remember talking to him, how can I stay positive? How can I stay consistent? What can I do to make an impact on this team? And deep down, I knew the answer to that question. But I needed to find someone, a leader in my life who I could lean on, right, when I maybe had a little bit of doubt. And I didn't have that concrete bulletproof belief that I really had in myself at Rutgers, that I started to become a little bit more insecure at the pro level. And Dan was the first person to kind of show me what that looked like and show me, hey, you know, isn't it about what you're doing or the long term here. This is about what you're doing every single day to show up and be a leader, right, for yourself and for this team. And it wasn't about, at that point, I was never going to be a captain, but it was, can I do these things that I'm talking about day in, day out, regardless of a title? And that, as I've built into my pro career now finally having the opportunity to sort of step into that leadership captain role in year 7, year 8, that perhaps when I was, you know, year 4 or 5, I thought that was something that was going to happen. But regardless of that, I knew that I had to continue to show up and keep working on these things that I'm talking about, and keep working on the vulnerability and the consistency and the awareness, and doing it and believing in myself that if I do the right things year in, year out, that eventually, right, things are going to go in my favor. And that's kind of where I am right now, and where it's kind of led me to my career. And I think that the biggest thing I can say to you guys is that leadership is a journey, and it's ever evolving. It's not a destination. It's not something that when I was, you know, your guys' age, I was thinking about the word leadership and how it relates to myself. But when I look back on my experience, my growth as a leader is parallel to my growth as a person and my growth in myself. So the more that I've been working on myself, the deeper that I have been able to connect with who I am and what my values are and what it means for me to show up every day as myself. And that in tangent has allowed me to grow as a leader, because I am doing the things that I know I have to do as a person and a man, and that is allowing me to show up better for the men and the women that are around me in my community every day. And I think that that's something that I didn't quite understand when I was your age, was that leadership is a journey. It's not a destination. It's not something that when you're a senior and you're a captain, it's just going to be you're the captain and that's it. It's an everyday process of those relationships and those growth with people that are around you. And then as you get to the next level, whether you're going to play college or not, it's going to be on your college campuses. Or if you're not going to college, it's going to be in the community that you're in. And it's not always going to be that you're a captain, because one day the captain stuff kind of shifts away, right? We're not playing sport forever. One day I'm going to be done playing sport, but it's going to be something that, hey, what kind of leader am I for my community? What kind of leader am I for my family? What kind of leader am I for my friends when they need me? And all of that comes back to myself and how much I'm connecting to myself and building the awareness of myself day in, day out. And so what I want to do right now, just after sharing that, I want to get a little bit more vulnerable with you guys and ask, where are you at right now in your journey of leadership, and what's going on right now collectively? I know I've talked to some of you kind of in sidebar conversations, but I would love to hear, you know, what are the things that are showing up for you right now, whether it's accountability and holding friends accountable, whether it's, you know, trying to get people to stay on your team that maybe are quitting, whether it's the seniors on the team aren't buying in as much as you would like them to be. And I want to talk about how those 4 words that I mentioned before all can relate back to the experiences that you guys are having. Who wants to open it up for us? Opportunity for courage. Yep. How can you get a whole team as a whole to buy in? That's a loaded question. Number one, it starts with yourself, right? And what you're doing and what you want out of that experience. But number 2, it's connection, right? So I would break it down. It's less about the whole team, and it's, it starts with that first player that's sitting next to you in the locker room, or the line mate that you have. What position do you play? Midi, right? It starts with the midfield line that you're playing on, right? And it's that ability for you to lean into that relationship with those guys, and then it goes from the midfielders to the defenders, right? And one by one, building a connection and an individual relationship with each of them, because we talk about buy-in, you're not going to be able to lead people that you don't know, right, that you're not connected to. And that's where that vulnerability piece comes in, around how many of those people on your team have you hung out with outside of practice? 4, right? So we talk about how do we get the whole team to buy in? Well, it's got to be how many guys are on the team. It's got to be 25 guys. You got to invest your time into 25 guys individually and start to implement what you know to be true, right? That faith within yourself, the belief within yourself about what's important for the program and what you want it to become. And now you're having those individual conversations. You're starting to be consistent with reaching out, meeting up, doing the things, going above and beyond, to then plant seeds in each one of them of the things that you believe are important. And that starts to spread out amongst the program. And it doesn't happen overnight, but it is your ability to be vulnerable and find those moments in time, those pockets of time. Great question. Who else we got? Opportunity to be courageous, right? Step up and ask a hard question and be vulnerable in front of a crowd.
How do you handle players who are starting to lose faith and start to, I don't know.
Sorry, say that again.
How do you handle players that are starting to lose compete?
How do we handle players that are starting to lose compete? When you say starting to lose compete, are you starting to lose belief in the season?
Becoming a little lazy, not really showing up.
Yep. So how do we, I would say, inspire the players that maybe are losing the ability to show up and be consistent? I would say the first thing, right, is back to what's your relationship like to them? And I think that starts to become a theme here: relationships, vulnerability, connecting with each other, right? If you're not connected to each other, you're not connected to the guy to the left and to the right of you, it becomes very easy for guys to start pointing fingers. And if you're not competing hard enough, if you're not doing the things that you have to do, if we're not connected to each other, there's no opportunity for me to hold you accountable and have a conversation about it, or even see where you're at, because ultimately there could be so many reasons why they're losing that. It could be, something happening at home. It could be that, maybe they're struggling in school. It could be that they're losing faith in the coaching staff. All these things are possible situations, but ultimately you don't know that unless you have that relationship, that one-to-one with them, right? So if you can lean into that a little bit more and start to ask those questions, take those opportunities, those moments in time, you can start to build that relationship and see, hey, where is he at? And then with some awareness and some objective analysis, maybe you go back to a trusted source. You say, hey, one of my teammates is struggling with X, Y, or Z. I'd love for you to get your thoughts on that. And then you could take that, and then, hey, now you could use that information to lean into that relationship a little bit. Couple more here. Yes, sir.
One fun fact and then a question.
Yep.
Fun fact is a guy named Mark Hellenack, who started the first New Jersey chapter of USA Lacrosse, is also the reason all of us who play lacrosse here started using lacrosse. Just want to point out we come from the same lacrosse lineage, which is cool. My question for you is, what is a personal mantra you use on the field to get you in the right headspace, and what's the best team motto you've ever played?
Team motto? Personal mantra? It's a good question. I don't think that I necessarily go out onto the field with a personal mantra as much as I have built belief in myself over time that I have to, when I get nervous before I play, remind myself, hey, you are the best. You're the best player on the field. And I have to I mean, even if it's not true, I have to remind myself of that when I'm going out there and I'm feeling those nerves and I'm about to step onto the field to compete. Because the young Jules in me, the underdog in me, that's where I always felt like I found my edge. I was never the most recruited player. I was never viewed as the best player on the team at all. So if I start to lean into that, it kind of gives me that little extra motivation, that little extra compete if I need that. So that would be the kind of the individual. And then from a team mantra, that's another. I don't feel like the teams that I've been on haven't had as much mantras, as I've just felt like the best teams that I've been on have been the most connected, and that we've been just the most emotionally bought into each other outside of just playing on the field. And I don't think we necessarily had a mantra around that. I just think that was the shared experiences throughout the season. You could just feel when we were on the field that before the game, and it be genuine, and that allowed us to go out there and play at a higher level because we were playing for something greater than just an accolade or just yourself. You were playing for the connection that you had to someone else. And I think that the teams that I have played on that we didn't have that, you could sense when things hit the wall and hit the fan that there wasn't that extra. I'm not going to go as hard for that ground ball because I don't actually know if that guy to the left or to the right of me cares about me or actually believes or is working as hard as I'm working, or we don't share anything, so I don't really care. And that's been the toughest for me playing professionally has been that's really hard to cultivate professionally. I think at the college level, there's innate buy-in with that, but I think at the pro level, that has to be manufactured, especially us not being together as much as you are together when you're in high school or in your pro. You guys are with each other 5-6 days a week at both the high school and college level, but when you're playing professional, you have to find those moments and those pockets of time, which also for me as a leader, finding ways to do that where it's organic and authentic to myself, whether it's the text message, it's the FaceTime, it's, hey, if you're local to me, going to meet up for a coffee or going to the field to shoot, whatever it might be, finding out ways to do that so that I know that I'm building that relationship. Those are the best teams that I've been on, but I don't think they've had a personal mantra for them. One more great opportunity, and if you don't want to talk right now, we could talk after too. Yep.
How would you deal with someone that thinks they're doing a lot on the team and they're like kind of bringing it down?
How would you deal with someone who thinks they're doing a lot on the team, but they're kind of bringing it down? That's a good question. I think, again, it comes back to having some awareness, right, and reflecting on that young man. Where is he at, right, mentally? If he's doing that, there's probably a reason why he's doing that. Maybe he's seeking out something. Maybe he wants to be seen in a certain light. I would ask myself those questions. What is it that he's looking to do and looking to get from the way that he's acting? And then from there, I would think about my relationship with him. I just dealt with, I hate to say the word dealt with, but there's a young man on our high school team that I kind of support right now that I think does that in some ways. And I think the only way that he's going to see that that's what's going on is I have to get closer to him, right? I have to get on his level. An example, we have the culture of the high school program that I'm kind of helping out. It's not great. And the gentleman that I'm referring to, they all went on a ski trip. And I told the captains, I said, hey, upperclassmen, some of them are captains, some of them are seniors. I said, hey, I don't think going on that ski trip is a great thing to do 2 weeks before the season, but I understand that you guys are going to go and it's not up for me to decide. But when you go on the ski trip, do me a favor, let's be safe. Let's avoid, doing any crazy tricks. Let's avoid doing things that are going to maybe put yourself in potential harm for the season because all of you are really important players on the team. Ski trip happens. He posts on Instagram him doing a trick. Text the captains and I say, hey, our friend here was doing this on Instagram, and I know I said to you guys, hey, look, like, it's important for us to take care of ourselves. Not only were you putting yourself in danger, but now you're showcasing that danger to the rest of the team. So now how are they viewing you guys as leaders? So you not only missed practice because you're on the ski trip, but now you also are showcasing, hey, I don't care as much. So, you know, we go to practice the following week, and I said to him, hey, you know, it's important that we take some accountability for here, because now one of the gentlemen on the ski trip got hurt. One of them was posting on Instagram. Another one was getting caught doing some things he shouldn't have been doing, and now is suspended from school, all because of the ski trip. So I said, hey, look, we're going to have to run a little bit, do some things, show the underclassmen that you guys want to do something for this season, that you care about the season, because now they're all looking at you as seniors and leaders, and, you know, struggling a little bit. And the gentleman that I'm referring to, he steps up and goes, hey, coach, to all of us. He says, hey, I don't think I can run because I have to go do work after practice. And I said, hey, do me a favor. I want you to tell the rest of these guys that you're going to skip running with them so that you can go do work after practice. And after that, I pulled him to the side and I said, hey, it's better off because I have to build a relationship with him, if you come to me and let me know on the side that you might have to do work. And I said to him, hey, you know, if you're going to miss work, I'd rather make sure that you can get paid still, miss work, and run with the team so that you can set a good example for the team. Now, me and his relationship has gone from here to here because now he trusts me, right? So now the antics and the things that he's doing and how he's kind of lashing out have changed because he knows I see him. I trust him. We built that, right? But I could have just said, hey, you know, you're a problem, and I'm going to push him to the side. But it's just about leaning in and building with them, right?
We'll wrap up there for time.
Yeah.
Let's